The MCAT Cars Podcast, session number 25. The Cars section of the MCAT gives thousands of pre-meds nightmares every night. Whether you're an ESL student, lack confidence while reading, or a slow reader like me, Jack Westin and the medical school headquarters are here to help you score higher in every section so you can be confident you're ready to get the MCAT score of your dreams. Welcome to the MCAT Cars Podcast. Before we begin, I want to remind you, if you are looking for some extra help from Jack Westin, go check out the Cars Strategy course and save $100 by using the link medicalschoolhq.net/Jack Westin. That is an affiliate link. I do earn a small commission every time you sign up with that link, but you also save $100. So it's a win-win for everybody. If you're looking for some more individualized help with your cars prep, which will help you on every section of the MCAT, again, medicalschoolhq.net/Jack Westin. This week we have a great article about China and chimeras and some rabbits and maybe the Energizer Bunny, something like that. We're going to dive in, have some fun with this article. Jack Westin back for some more MCAT Cars podcasts. I don't know about you, but I haven't been on my phone all week. So after last week's discussion about how phones are ruining us, and I've been pretty productive. Feels good.
We say that, right? I like to say I've been on my phone less, but who knows? Right? Like
what does your phone tell you? What does screen time say? You get that thing once a week. It's like your phone usage was up 26%. Darn it.
Yeah. It might be down 10%. I'm hoping. Yeah, I might be lying there. I don't know. But yeah.
It's hard. It's so hard. All right. What do we have in store for us this week?
So this is a great passage. We're going back into like the kind of topics, the kind of things that the MCAT likes to play with us on. So play with us with, just in general, talk about and use. So we're going back into that realm.
Okay. Again, if you want to follow along, click the link in your podcast app that'll take you to the article, or go to our website at medicalschoolhq.net and find all of the podcasts there. All right. Our article today starts out in 2003. A team of scientists in China managed to create embryos containing a mix of rabbit and human DNA. All right. So 2003. We're kind of setting the scene here, 2003 in China, and embryos that have rabbit and human DNA.
Okay.
Context. All right. Most of the biological matter was human, while the rabbit DNA was present only in the mitochondria, the energy generators of the cells. So is it weird that I'm picturing like the Energizer Bunny in my cells?
That's awesome.
Does that help kind of remember this kind of thing?
I think so. Right. Yeah. Visualization is so important. And I talk about that in the trial session, and we go into it a lot in the course. I think it's a very important thing to do. Yeah. And the problem with this first sentence is it's talking about science. Mm-hmm. And, students they like science. They like DNA stuff, right? Yeah. Like, especially if it's in a cars passage. But if they feel like they don't know it, like, oh, wow, rabbit and human DNA, what? They might start getting a little bit nervous. But hey, you know what? We're gonna go with it and see what happens. See what they're what they're gonna talk about. Go ahead.
Yeah. The aim was to try to find new ways of growing and harvesting the stem cells present in early human development, which were and are a promising avenue for medical study and treatment. So they're telling us why they were doing this.
Okay.
All right. Next paragraph. It wasn't long, however, before controversy erupted over these so-called chimeras, as they were dubbed by some researchers. So the definition of chimera may throw people off. I think they're telling you what a chimera is, these so-called chimeras, the kind of human rabbit embryos.
Mm-hmm. Okay. They're just defining it,
yeah,
right?
They're defining it and saying that there's controversy over it.
Right.
Were they human? What would happen if they were allowed to develop? And so just questions around their research and what they were. Soon, activists mobilized to restrict or quash the research. And so people are trying to stop the research from going on. In 2005, the U.S. outlawed patents on human embryos. In 2007, the human-animal hybrid Prohibition Act was proposed in Congress, although ultimately it failed to pass into law. So moving away from China, now we're in the US saying that we outlawed patents on embryos, and there was this act that was proposed but didn't pass into law.
Right.
According to the bill, research into hybrids was said to compromise human dignity and the integrity of the human species. So we're kind of getting an understanding of where these politicians drew the line. We're getting into the integrity of the human species.
Right. Okay.
Pig heart transplants or the administration of animal-based insulin were acceptable, but the threat of potentially viable cellular hybrids was too strong, despite the myriad social benefits it could yield. So it gives us some animal examples, pig heart transplants and animal-based insulin, but saying that the cellular hybrids was crossing the line.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like an oxymoron here. I mean, you do some of it, but then you can't do other things. So it's interesting to point out, as long as you know this paragraph is discussing there are issues with this, there are, some potential ethical issues, I think we're going to be okay. Mm-hmm. Great.
Okay, next paragraph. These cells were very different in appearance to their mythological namesake, the chimeras of Greek mythology that possessed a lion's head and body, a second goat's head, and a serpent's tail. So kind of giving us where the chimera name came from and potentially maybe why people are scared of them. Like we picture a lion's head with a human body.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if anyone has seen these, like you can Google image it, but it seems pretty scary, Okay.
Yet the rabbit-human embryos and the ancient Greek image shared a deep similarity in the public imagination. They were both monsters. So kind of getting at the heart of what these politicians and other researchers were scared of, the activists were scared of.
Sounds good. Yeah, and so it's setting up kind of how people view these things, right? They're associating these embryos, these chimeras, to something that is monstrous, right? Something that is kind of scary.
Yeah. Okay.
Great.
Next paragraph. The meaning of monstrosity has morphed dramatically over the course of history. So now kind of getting into monsters and definitions around that.
Yeah, so it's an interesting twist here. We were talking about chimeras and how people associate them to monsters. Now we're talking about the history of monsters, or at least that's where we're going. Okay.
Traditionally, monsters came from elsewhere, at the unknown edge of maps, from distant times and places. So kind of giving us a history of monsters and mostly the unknown, fear of the unknown. But as the bounds of the known universe has expanded, the habitats of monsters shrunk back. So I think that would confuse people, the habitats of monsters. What does that mean? But they kind of define it before as that monsters came from elsewhere, the unknown edges of the map. But now that we kind of have mapped every place on at least our planet, then there's no place for the monsters to hide anymore.
Right, exactly. They've shrunk back. We're going back to our world, right? Not outside of our world, okay?
Yep. The world is now so thoroughly charted that there seems to be little space left for indigenous monsters. Instead, we import extraterrestrials and summon up artificial intelligence or cutting-edge technologies to act as the fearsome, quote, others for our books, TV series, and films. So the author is saying, look, we don't have, quote, monsters to be scared of anymore because we've charted everything on our planet. And so we as a species are now fearing other things.
That's it. All right. Outside things, right? Mm-hmm. Things that are beyond this world. So again, we try to expand. We see monsters in this unknown kind of outerly kind of world. But then once we understand our world, we seem to be designating monsters from the external here.
Okay. Next paragraph. But monsters are restless things. Okay. So just the author is kind of switching, saying they're restless. I'm not sure what he's trying or she's trying to tell us, but we'll take it for face value. not only have they moved outward, they have also burrowed into our viscera, into our cells, into those ambivalent spaces within the human frame. So I would probably still be a little thrown off at this point. I am a little thrown off. I'm trying to understand what the author is trying to say here. The ambivalent spaces within the human frame. I don't know what.
Well, we were talking about outward, right? We were talking about outside of this planet, correct?
Yep.
So it says not only have they moved outward. So where else could they be if they're not outward?
Inside us.
And inward, right? So they have burrowed inside our, into our viscera, our organs, etc. And that's where the ambivalent spaces are within our human, our body, right? That's the unknown territory, I guess.
Yeah. Since the 19th century, humanity has been consciously developing techniques that can reshape the world in wonderful, dramatic, but often terrifying ways. So given a time frame here, the 19th century, how we're developing and creating things that could be terrifying.
Right.
We have created agricultural systems for taming nature, tools to tinker with the genetic building blocks of life, and machines that might soon be simulacra of ourselves. I haven't seen that word before. So giving some examples here, the author's giving us examples of techniques of what we've been building to reshape our world.
Right. It seems, go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say that are also terrifying. This last thing, the simulacra of ourselves.
Right. So it's some kind of representation of ourselves, probably simulation of ourselves.
Yeah.
So yeah, great. So it's kind of setting up the fact that we create our own things, right? We're creationists. We're creationists. We make stuff. Okay.
Yeah. At the same time, transport and communication networks now connect the globe so completely that pandemics such as Zika and Ebola seem a bigger threat than ever. So giving us some more context about our creations, our transportation and communication networks, and some diseases that have spread because of that, or more easily spread because of it.
Well, it's also maybe the fact that we're more aware of it, right? So it seems to be a bigger threat. And, we don't know where the author is going, but it may be a more kind of like a mental kind of throw off, right? It's not necessarily a bigger threat because we're more connected, but maybe because of our communication, we're more aware of it in some ways. It might be going that direction. We don't really know, but we do know that communication and networks and stuff have something to do with this outbreak. Okay.
The modern age has also brought with it the deep isolation of individuals, apparently untethered to place, connecting through screens but divorced from nature. So it's kind of interesting talking about the last episode about how technology is distracting us. Now it's saying it's isolating us as well.
Okay.
These changes have given rise to a new breed of monsters, ones that originate from the dystopian realities within the human mind. Ooh, interesting. So the author is basically saying we are kind of our own monsters. We have monsters inside our own heads from everything that's going on, what we're creating, and being kind of isolated as well.
Right. So this is where it comes back to the idea of, hey, look, we're afraid of things, right? We're afraid of things that we're creating, essentially, right? And what have we been creating? What was that thing that we were just, talking about earlier on, right? The chimeras, right? So essentially, we're creating things that we're afraid of, right? In some ways.
Yeah.
Great. So big picture of this paragraph?
Of this passage or the paragraph itself?
You could do this paragraph and then the passage.
So this last paragraph, it's kind of that second sentence that's not only moved outward but also inward. So a lot of what we fear, a lot of the monsters, they're inside of us.
Right. Okay. And the big picture?
Oh, big picture is, I don't know, that we're kind of monsters throughout the world, both what we're creating in a laboratory with that first paragraph to Greek mythology to what's inside of our brains.
Right. So, we kind of create stuff, and these creations are our monsters, right? And we've been creating stuff that are outwardly, right? And now we're going to the inwardly, right? So we're going to our cells and things that are within our body. So I think that's kind of the idea that the author is going for, right? This idea that we are sometimes afraid of our own creations, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Oh, that was a hard one. I think that was an interesting one because it wasn't necessarily about an easy subject, and it was kind of this intangible kind of thing in our head and what we're thinking in the human mind. So I think that would be a hard one for students.
Yeah, and the reason why it's hard is because they start off with something that's pretty easy to understand, right? Chimeras, and then they get more abstract.
Yeah.
Right. And that abstraction is what throws students off because they're not used to thinking about how these problems are more internally based.
All right, so there you have it. Now you understand about chimeras and monsters and how I think the article was saying it's all in our head and maybe we need to work on that. Hopefully that was a helpful article for you to break down, to try to understand what is going on, to break through these barriers of getting hung up on sentences, getting hung up on words, and just pushing through, as we talked about in an earlier episode, just putting down that puzzle piece and moving on. I think that was a great analogy that we came up with on the fly as we were recording. So put down that puzzle piece, move on, and you'll figure it out as you go. Again, if you are looking for some more help with your CARS prep, go to medicalschoolhq.net/Jack Westin. That will activate a $100 off coupon that you can't get anywhere else, and it'll help you save as you prepare for your MCAT. I hope you have a great week. We'll see you next time here on the MCAT CARS podcast.